now you get to opt back in to being on the call. All right. It's so fun to see faces again. And some of you, I have seen your faces before, and some of you, I've only talked via email with you. And so I love to be putting faces with names now. So fun. So fun.
And just in case you wondered, Quinn and Emily are not running from the law or in witness protection or anything. They are, well, listen to Emily. She scores extra Episcopalian points today because she is not only listening and participating, she is also putting together Lenten boxes, bags. Emily, I'm assuming for children or for families?
It's going to be, excuse me, both. So not too much of the bags. I decided just to stick with the paper stuff. But if you haven't heard or done Vibrant Communications, she's really great. That's who I'm doing micro practices this year. We used hers last year as well. So going to put some origami paper and stuff in there. So.
And Quinn is at work. So God bless him. He's dealing with power washing and things, and he's still participating. So there you go.
So good. So good. Well, I think there's Kelly again. Her internet seemed like it was not playing nice. So I think what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and get started, and we'll let folks jump in and join us as they can. And we'll get the ball rolling. So welcome to February's youth ministry cohort. Excited to see you all today, and hoping that we'll have a few more folks join too. My name is Heather Kenny. For those of you that it's been a while since we've chatted, Mary Beth is taking a hiatus today, and so I'm here to host, but really you're here to hear Stephanie Caro today. That's my friend here with the amazing Valentine's scarf, and if you look real close in the background, right?
Oh yes, Valentine's decoration.
Valentine's tree in the back.
Yes. Yep. And my Valentine's scarf, which I wore just for you all today. Heather was
a youth minister
at my house. Yeah.
She's a youth minister, y'all. It's through and through.
And she came to my house a few weeks ago. She spent the night, and she discovered that I like to decorate for holidays. So, it
was super fun.
Yeah,
it was super. She even had like those heart-shaped cookies with the good icing. You know what I'm talking about? Like the she just goes all out. It's great. It's great. So Stephanie is a small church guru. She's a youth ministry guru. She's all churches things guru, but her heart is really with the small church. Churches that have less than 100 folks in them. And she's going to talk all about that. But you are going to learn a ton through this. So I encourage you to take notes. Of course, we'll share the agenda and notes with everybody afterwards as well. So if you don't catch something, no worries, because this is being recorded and you can listen to it again and glean even more. But before we jump in, let's take just a minute to go through and check in with each other. And so if we'll go kind of, I'll call in a circle according to my screen, and just introduce yourself, remind everyone of the church where you are serving or that you're affiliated with, and then tell us about something beautiful that you have witnessed recently. Something beautiful that you've witnessed recently. So the first person on my screen is Allred. So Allred, you get to go first.
Hi, I'm Allred or Elred Dean, and I was talking to Stephanie earlier. If you want the Old English pronunciation, is Eilred. It means I've read a lot. It just means like all Allred. I found another Allred in the Philippines, and he and I communicate through
Wow.
Messenger on Facebook, and developing a friendship there, which is beautiful on itself. I'm at St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Columbus, Indiana, and I'm not sure if I know another Swanee student online, and I'm not sure if you're part of the Diocese of Indianapolis, or, oh, you are, okay. By chance, do you know Lucas and Sam? Okay, so I'm going to say this. I've just met another beautiful person today who's going to be part of the diocese, and I'm looking forward to meeting her and working with you.
Great. All right. Quinn, are you at a place where you can share with us today? If not, we'll skip and we'll go on to Emily for now. All right, Emily, would you like to jump in?
Hi, sorry.
Oh, no, go for it, Quinn.
My name is Quinn McKenzie. I'm affiliated with St. John's Episcopal Church in Bedford, Indiana. I am the unofficial youth director there, I guess. I'm the volunteered youth director there. So
Unofficial, which usually means unpaid. Yeah. Volunteer.
And then
Voluntold.
tell us something beautiful that you've witnessed recently.
Well, something beautiful that I witnessed recently was the baptism of my son at 2 months old. So that was 2 months ago.
Oh.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Emily, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, I'm Emily Elam. I am the director of Children and Youth and Trinity Episcopal in Bloomington. And something beautiful was I had lunch with a couple of girlfriends today, and I just really enjoyed that time
Oh, that's
together.
great.
Yeah.
Nothing better. So good. Rebecca, how about you?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Nickel. I'm the rector at St. Timothy's Episcopal Church on the south side of Indianapolis. And something beautiful. We were visiting John and Margaret Jones in Bloomington, and a couple of weeks ago, and they had their Christmas up, and boy, their collection is awe-inspiring. So love the stories behind their Christmas collections.
That sounds amazing. Thank you. Allison, how are you today?
I'm doing okay. I am the youth director at St. Christopher's Episcopal Church in Carmel, Indiana. And something beautiful. My daughter turned 18 on Tuesday. And so that was hard, but exciting. So kind of the opposite of Quinn. We have baptism and we're having her getting ready to leave for college.
Bittersweet for sure. Yep. Awesome. Yuri.
It's bittersweet unless you have 7 kids like I do. Then it's like awesome. Goodbye. Here's some luggage.
It's true. It's true. She's my oldest, so.
Oh, that is hard.
That's
It's
harder.
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Judy Rodriguez, and I am I've been recently ordained as a deacon in the Diocese of Indianapolis, but I'm still in seminary. This is my last semester. I'm here in Sewanee. Thank you. I served for a whole year and a half in a parish in Nashville, Tennessee, which is called St. Augustine's, which is tied to Thistle Farms, and it's a huge church. But my hope is that when I go back to Indy, I might be going to a smaller church. I don't know that for sure. And I imagine that if I'm going to a small church, I need to know how to connect with my youth, and I would hope I can do that. So that's why I'm here. And something beautiful, Sewanee is a beautiful place, and I just think every morning I get to walk out of my house and see a whole bunch of trees and deer right in front of me. So I love that.
Good. Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Nixon. I am on the call kind of for two reasons and from two places. So my home parish is St. Timothy's Episcopal on the south side with Reverend Rebecca. And, we're actually considering starting a youth group there. And so it's really lovely to be on these calls and to be hearing ideas and connecting with others. But then the other side of it is that I'm also an employee on the diocesan staff. I am the assistant for congregational development. And so I am also kind of a staff liaison who is here on these calls as well. So I have two ways that I'm super interested in these cohort visits. Let's see, and something beautiful. So over the weekend, we were celebrating my 5-year-old's birthday and had family over. And he has just started sort of getting comfortable showing affection to family members that aren't his mom or dad. And so the beautiful thing that I saw was he kissed the cheek of his aunt and his uncle when they went to say goodbye for the very first time. And his aunt started crying because she was just so taken aback by the sudden unprompted affection of a 5-year-old. And so I just thought that was so touching and sweet that he just did that all on his own because he felt like it.
I love it. So great. Thank you. Thank you. Stephanie, what about you? What's something beautiful that you've seen recently?
Well, I figure it is, I had a really special guest a couple of Fridays ago. That was Heather Kenny. So that was really great. And something exciting is kind of happening today. I wasn't kidding when I said we have 7 kids, and they're all grown and gone. Hallelujah. And the second to youngest, she and her husband just landed about an hour ago here in Houston. They're coming to spend a couple of days with my husband who's sick. And so that's going to be something beautiful.
Yes, it is.
And we're excited. Yeah.
Yeah. So good.
Heather.
So my something beautiful is, it's a little bit cliche, but I really did stop this morning. I was walking the dog this morning, and the sun was coming up, and it was one of those sunrises where the rays are just spreading out everywhere. And it was absolutely gorgeous, and it made me stop and actually pause in the morning and reflect and enjoy it. And I don't pause as often as I should in life. So it was good. It was really good. All right. So before we jump in, let's just ground ourselves with some prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Father, thank you so much for bringing us together today. Thank you for putting youth ministry on the hearts of each of the folks who are here today and those who aren't able to join us live, but will be watching this later. I pray that you equip and encourage and just help us to see your hand in our ministries, no matter what stage they're in. Amen.
Amen.
All right, just a reminder, the focus of this cohort is to create a positive and collegial environment for youth leaders to gather for fellowship and professional development. I think we're going to do both of those today. For equipping to provide training on current ministry best practices, and for shared experiences to facilitate conversation about shared challenges facing individual congregations, along with results-oriented solutions. And that's exactly how we came to the subject matter that we're going to be talking about today, because many of the churches in the diocese are under a certain size and considered small churches, and doing youth ministry in a church that is smaller can look a little bit different sometimes than doing youth ministry in a church that's larger. And often what we see with youth ministry is only large church youth ministries. We don't hear about small church very often. And so we're going to give it the time and attention that it deserves today. And there is no one better in the world to talk about it than Stephanie Caro. So Stephanie, I am going to turn it over to you.
Oh, that's so lovely. Well, thank you for that. I am going to just pull up the PowerPoint here, and let me start by saying that I really do love smaller churches. It's what I grew up with. And then when I became a full-time youth pastor, I served larger churches until I went into the ordination process. And I served 5 churches in the Florida Conference of the United Methodist Church. And it was at my the last church that I served there. It was 5 churches over 35 years. I know, I don't look that old, right? That I discovered that ministry with like 6 teenagers is way different than ministry with 60 teenagers. And I really liked it better. So what we're going to talk about today are some commonalities. Really, when you're talking about youth ministry in a smaller church, for the most part, you're talking about ministry in a smaller church, no matter what the age. Because if you've got like 60, 70 people in an average week ASA, attending worship, everything you do for the most part gets done together. The children are with the youth, the children and youth. If you have a Christmas caroling day, it's all ages. If, it takes all ages to make an Easter service happen, all of that sort of thing. And so we're going to look at some specifics to youth ministry, some specifics to smaller churches, and especially some things we've learned about ministry and youth ministry post-pandemic. So let's just take a look at some things. Here's what we do know post-pandemic. Oh, and by the way, I am going to send Heather the PowerPoint from today. And so that that'll just give you, if you want to look it over or show it to other people or whatever, you're welcome to do that. So I will send that to her. And then also let me make an open invitation. You got any questions about small church youth ministry? You are free to reach out to Heather, and Heather, just share my email address with everybody or put it in the chat. So here's what we know post-pandemic. It's 2023, and the metrics have really started to show themselves. The worst of the pandemic is over, of the actual pandemic, though, there's little shots here and there. And what we were afraid was going to happen did happen. And that is, there's a lot of families just not rushing back to church. They got kind of comfortable. I think we found out we were all way too busy. And then when we weren't busy, we kind of grabbed a little bit of our happiness and rest back or something like that. And another thing that we learned is that there are programs and ministries that we did before the pandemic that won't be back, and especially shouldn't be back. Even this year, in the school year of 22-23. It's a great opportunity, like if your youth ministry or children's ministry needed to, bury off that certain program they've been doing for 68 years, and it was time for it to go. It's still a good time to blame it on the pandemic. You can blame it on the pandemic without the rector getting in trouble, right? And there are just some things that shouldn't come back, even though that's still a struggle for many of your congregants, because they already lived in a place of wanting things to be like they were 20 years ago, and to not have some programs come back is even especially more painful. But some things won't, some things shouldn't come back. And we all sort of discovered that we needed to live stream. I think the one thing we've learned from the pandemic is where the place of virtual ministry fits in. And the change and adding of virtual ministry is going to be hard, but it's worth it because it's here to stay. And virtual ministry, or developing a virtual congregation, is more than just putting a camera in the choir loft and pointing it down towards the front. There is ministry. There are additional parishioners or potential guests to reach just because of virtual, and can be done in viable, engaging ways. A difficult metric that we've discovered is that post-pandemic in 22-23, there is settling in to be about a 33 to 40% decline in participation versus 2019 or before that. Let me say, though, and you and I both know this, that our numbers were declining anyway. The pandemic didn't cause that. It just sort of exacerbated it. Or maybe it was the final nail or something like that in a decline that had already really begun. And so we were struggling with our numbers becoming less and less. However, I think that there's no better time for changing things up than right now, because we're still figuring out what a new normal might be. And so if you were going to practice some things or change some things, it all still feels up in the air enough for that to be possible. So what do we need to know? I bet you've all done this already, because we're far enough past main shutdowns, but I still find some churches that haven't really taken their whole membership roles or guest roles and discovered who truly left, or who's just waiting to be contacted again, or who got mad and left. So I think it's important for us to just have every member check-in call thing, whether it's a children's ministry, youth ministry, or even just the general membership, because what we need to know is who really is still here. And you might be surprised at how that phone call to say, you've been missed, how much that would mean. What we do need to know, we need to be discovering in this school year and in 2023, what will work. Because I had said we need to get rid of things that hadn't worked. I think we want to be discovering what will work. And probably the most important thing I would say post-pandemic is this. Every church should probably figure out new targets of success, new measurements of success. What does success look like? Because it can no longer be based on numbers, because the numbers are going to be less. But that doesn't mean you're not doing successful ministry in your children's ministry or in your youth ministry. If you've got 6th through 12th graders that are coming faithfully to confirmation or to EYC or coming to a youth group or whatever you call it, that's still success. Even if in the mid 2000s it was 15, you got kids that are being faithful, that's successful. Maybe targets of membership of measurements of success in youth ministry will be how you engage, what engagement looks like, not just in attendance. And so that requires, though, on the part of youth workers, for us to keep track of those. We can't really share with, with our vestries how successful a youth ministry is if we're not tracking that. And if we're not keeping, a good database and how often they are attending, or how often you, the youth worker, got to go see them in their high school play, or how often y'all met up at Starbucks and had a, iced caramel macchiato. I think it's going to be important for us to figure out ways to put virtual into our ministries, because one of the things that we heard families saying this before the pandemic, but we always hear, well, you just don't understand. Our kids are just so busy. My kids are in, I don't know why the parent sounds like that, but our kids are in soccer and they're in quilting class and they're in ballet. They're just way too busy. And I'm convinced that we can capture the attention of some busy kids with creative virtual. Now, they hated youth group by Zoom back when we were in the pandemic. That's because everybody that was just a different time and place. But you start running like a 20-minute Bible study on Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock after they get home from everything, and they can just be in their jammies, and y'all have a weekly touch base thing, that'll work. Or if you did a community-wide virtual Bible study for soccer players at a convenient, later at nighttime, it'll work. So what the last two things is what we really do need to know. And I think we're discovering them, are the residual effects. We're still discovering what that is from the pandemic. But I think we're kind of nailing it. It's an all new ministry ball game. And the vice president of ministry architects, his name is Jeff Dunrankin, and he may be the wisest man I've ever met. Right? Heather agrees. And I was doing a church-wide assessment at a Presbyterian church a few weeks ago, and I said, yeah, in the mid-2000s, mid-2010s, they were worshiping about 200, and now they're worshiping like 90 every week. And he said, you know what, post-pandemic, 90s are the new 200s. Does that make sense? Kind of like that TV show, Orange is the New Black. It is sort of the new thing. And so I think one of the residual effects is we've got to live into what we are now, because it is what it is. And sadly, I think what we do need to know that we are already discovering is that volunteers probably aren't returning like we had hoped they would. For some of the same reasons families aren't. We kind of just started to enjoy being a little less busy, right? Hey, and by the way, in case you're wondering, we're gonna have a little question and answer time when we're done. So keep all of that stuff in mind. So here's what we should skip when we're kind of doing ministry out of post-pandemic. And that is, we're gonna have to stop comparing ourselves to 2019 and what was happening before. It's really hard not to do that. Here we are 3 years later, and folks are still thinking, well, do you want our church numbers before the pandemic or after? Well, and Heather and I know that in our ministry architects work, the answer is we want the numbers now. Doesn't matter what they were in 2019. Just like we probably, we need to stop making comparisons to the way it used to be, because that's a slippery slope. I mean, gosh, you want to talk about ministry heyday, those were the 1990s, youth ministry. So I just realized maybe some of you were born in the 1990s, but for those of us that weren't, back then to do youth ministry, all you needed was like a ping pong table, some 2 liters of soda, and a bunch of pretzels, and 100 kids would show up to the church. It was so glorious. Now, it's not going to be like that. So I think we're still in a stage coming out of the pandemic that setting a hard and fast program plan in a smaller church that says we're going to do this for the next 5 years. I think it's missing an opportunity for us to experiment and kind of be able to ebb and flow with who your kids are now and how we're all sort of learning to re-engage with the world again. What we should skip definitely is hanging on to old technology. The pandemic taught even my 86-year-old mother that VHS tapes are dumb. And listen, for a very small fee, Heather and I will come get rid of your VHS players and those old VeggieTales videos that are still hanging out in some Sunday school somewhere aware. And then I think the last two, we just shouldn't worry about big numbers because it's not going to change anything. Now, it's easier said than done when you're the youth director working at a church where anxious older leadership still sort of see the youth ministry and the children's ministry as being the salvation of a church. I hear a lot of people, in my generation, I'm a baby boomer. I'm like smack in the middle baby boomer. I hear a lot of baby boomer leaders say, well, we've got to get more families into our church. Well, that'd be great if it's because they want to share the good news of the risen Savior with more families. But oftentimes what they're really saying is we've got to get more families into the church because we're starting to die off and we need more, we need more money. We need younger legs. So, okay, here's what we can do. Just reboot. Bring people in on an experiment. Say we're going to over the rest of the school year, we're going to try 3 formats of youth ministry, and we're going to tell you what they are. And so at the end of each of the 2 months, we'll send you a little Google form to fill out, and you get to give input on, we tried the ministry like this, we tried the ministry like this, we tried it like that. And it's kind of fun when people know it's an intentional experiment. Families aren't comfortable if things feel like too flaky, but if they know it's intentionally changing, then they'll buy in. Our ministry needs to be effective, not efficient. That's what the 90s were. The 90s and 2000s, we could just expect everyone to come to us and it was efficient. Now it's going to take youth people, children's people, more one-on-one intentional connections to not only keep who we have, much less gain anyone new that we can be making a difference in the life of. The old-fashioned sending birthday cards or making sure you follow up with kids when they missed, or really good follow-up when they did come to, your overnighter or whatever. The last box, I'm going to close with that one. And then I've got a couple more slides. I want to share some interesting stats with you. Is one thing we can do, one thing we should do is we're going to have to help our church, our potential volunteer base, and even families who still say they're connected to your parish. We're going to have to help them reclaim why their kids participating in your children's and youth ministry is important. I think we lost sight of some of that. It just got real comfortable when we weren't so pressured to do so many things, and helping them see why hanging out with folks that are people of faith, why participating in the community of faith, whether it be in person or virtual, why all of that's important, will be our hardest task with the largest payoff. Does that make sense? So here are some stats post-pandemic about what's happening in church today. In our smaller churches, the average membership of mainline denominations, the average median, there's many is lower than there are higher in America. Church membership is 70 people. And I actually think in the Episcopal Church, that number's closer to about 55 in membership, because before the pandemic in Episcopal churches, the number was 59 average church membership. 93% of churches in America have less than 300 members. So if us thinking that the large church down the, everybody's the larger church down the road, I think the reason why I want smaller churches to find this average number of 70 in membership a hopeful thing is the reality is the smaller church is the normal. That is the regular, and it's and if it's you and if it's that church down the road, then actually there's a lot of folks out there who really do celebrate more being in a smaller church than the big giant church of what's happening now. Average size youth ministry in America, 6 to 7 students. The average children's ministry, which is birth through 5th grade, that's only 10 students. Two stats that are really difficult, though, are 15% of Americans are in a house of worship on any given Sabbath. Now, in the 2000 census, that number was 42%. As of the 2020 census, that number is down to 15%. However, interesting though, the slide in church attendance has slid way more than the belief in God. So there's still a stronger belief in a higher power. There's just less of a belief in organized institutional religion. And then active now in mainline denominations is considered once every 2 weeks. 5 weeks, once every 5 weeks, which is kind of scary because that means out of 50, what's 52 divided by 5? Like 10 and some. That means maybe we see the average family 10, 12 times a year, maybe 18 out of 52 weeks. How do you teach a proper scope and sequence discipleship path when you see a student who 20 years ago, we would see students maybe 35 to 40 weeks out of a 52-week year? We could actually teach this and this and this and this with a great teaching plan. And now maybe you're going to see them 18 weeks a year. How do you cover it all? It's a real question. Okay, so we're about getting to wrap this up. I know it's quick, but I want to leave some time for you all to have to ask questions. And so we'll review these last two real quickly. Don't give up. Don't feel don't feel hopeless because yours is a smaller ministry. Small churches have some youth ministry advantages other bigger churches don't. For an example, not only you, the youth worker, or you, the rector, can know every kid, you should expect every church member who's over the age of 21 to also know every kid. It's not that hard. if you've got an average weekly worship of 60 people and there's 6 teenagers in the church, you know, my 86-year-old mother can remember every single TV show that's on at what time during the day on any given day a week. And I always tell her, Mom, if you can memorize the TV schedule, you can also memorize 6 kids' names in your church. We just have to make that, we just have to help them figure out a way to do that. When you're a smaller church, it's possible to visit every single teenager on their own turf. And in fact, you know, spring musicals or spring concerts are coming up. Make it a church-wide event. Everybody goes to the local, I don't know, I was going to say Shakey's Pizza or Pizza Hut, but I don't think you can go to those anymore like a restaurant. But anyway, you have some dinner somewhere, and then as a church, go to the spring musical. It's multi-generational. It will sure send a good message to the community about that's what St. Mark's Episcopal Church is all about. And you'll have made an impact in a teenager or two's life that would be unforgettable, the time that the church showed up. It is easier to manage a youth group of 6, 7, 8, 9 kids. It's easier to just all of a sudden on a dime decide, okay, we'll call every kid, make sure they know, but we're going to go see the new Marvel movie, or we're going to go see the new whatever Disney comes out with. And I think when you're a smaller church, I think your kids are really basically less fussy. I've served some bigger churches where the kids just sometimes in the youth group just acted so privileged and so loved them. But I think in a smaller group, they kind of band together because they're all they got. All right. So what are the disadvantages though? Well, there are a couple, and there's ways to overcome that. There is a shallower fishing pond. And what we mean by that, there are just less volunteer people or staff people, a place to gather the folks you need to do youth and or children's ministry. You may not have all the resources that you need, but that's where the bigger church can come in handy. Or I have seen a lot of success lately with churches collaborating with each other, doing a collaborative youth ministry. And it really answers the second thing. If you've got an iffy critical mass, then you can even do some great staff hiring when you do a collaborative ministry. When you have a smaller church and less teenagers, it can be tough teaching those. You know, you got a Sunday school class or you got a confirmation class where like on Sunday mornings, where you got like the 1 6th grade boy who's, I mean, 6th grade boys are awesome and they're awkward, right? They're weird. I love them. Then you got like 2 8th grade girls, but one of them is just because she spent the night and the mom won't take them to the mall if they don't both go to church. And then you got the one senior in high school, and that senior in high school is only there because it's the preacher's kid, right? And so you got these 4 kids in Sunday school and none of them really want to be there, but they just came for the donuts and because they had to. If you work more intergenerationally, though, multi-generationally, I think there's possibilities. It is tough to staff a small church because it's tough to find somebody qualified. It depends what you're looking for, because you know, you don't really have to have a youth ministry education to be a great youth worker. God bless you just for being willing to step up. The problem is, a lot of churches want to pay a youth worker 8 to 10 hours a week. And they want the quality of someone who's been in ministry like 20 years at, you know, $8 an hour. So it's hard to staff that. And then last but not least, not that this has ever happened to me, when you're a smaller church, it's harder to fly under the radar. You know, every small, maybe yours doesn't, Episcopalians are so much holier and better than us United Methodists. But smaller churches, there's always that one family, like where 8 generations are still attending the church, and the oldest one built the fellowship hall, and they all know each other, and you better not talk about them at the grocery store because there's at least 3 generations in one aisle spread apart from each other. It's really hard to fly under that politicalness in a small church unless you're part of the family. But it turned out okay. I got another job. So anyway, that is our quick little run through that I am more than happy to just answer any questions you have now. I will send this to Heather for her to load up into I'm guessing y'all have a Google Drive or something, or she can just email it to y'all. And so questions, I see there's some things in the chat, but there's my email address. Okay. Yeah, reach out if you have any questions. What can I chat through with you today though? Yes, Yuri.
So my instinct is telling me, hearing you, that the best thing to do with small church youth is to develop our own curriculums, or would you recommend buying one that is already pre-packed?
I always go for buy the one that's already pre-packed. When you're in a smaller church, you've got less dedicated staffing hours. Honestly, I'm never one to tell even larger churches to write their own curriculum, because for the most part, there are professional curriculum writers, and they're professional because they've kind of been educated in it. Youth workers can find a lot better way to spend their time than, if they work 12 hours a week or 20 hours a week and spend 10 of it writing curriculum, there's so many better ways to spend that time. I would buy a curriculum and then pick and choose wisely. Right? And this is more for children's ministry than youth ministry, but it could work in youth ministry. If we're seeing families less and less, I've kind of grown attached to the monthly rotational model, where you've got one theme a month told in 3-4 different ways. So the kids that do come every week don't get bored because there's 3 or 4 ways the story is told or experienced. But since it's only one key story or theme a month, you've got a better chance at the kid that does only come once a month or so hitting at least all 12 themes. Does that make sense? What else? That was fun. Thank you. Elred. Did I say it close? But I can't say the other way.
If
Okay.
you can think of this letter and the
red.
color red,
Yeah. Elred, there you go.
you have it. I'm new to St. Paul's. I'm about 6 weeks, 7 weeks in, about that, right, Kelly?
Goodness.
And one of the challenges that I see as opportunity is, and you put your finger on the fear of many people where an aging church, there's no kids. That's St. Paul's. It's an aging church with no kids. And we are seeing growth, but not in the demographics they're looking for. And I'm wondering how to help the leadership of the church, not just me, but everyone, to get outside the red doors
Mhm.
and into their communities and find out
Amen.
what's going on. How can the church participate in local neighborhoods? And what are your thoughts on that?
Elred, you've hit the nail on the head, or hit the button. I don't know. You've hit it. This is actually true for any size church, but if we in churches want to reach millennial and Gen Z families, it's going to have to be outside our doors, because they're not running inside.
Right.
The Gen Z families, they're like having our younger children now, there's a real suspicion of the organized church. And so they've got to have a whole lot of trust before they'd ever walk inside the doors. So much so that if you were going to have a egg hunt, they'd feel more comfortable doing the egg hunt outside than doing the egg hunt inside. That's how deep-seated that mistrust has become. And you know what? I don't blame them. We earned
I
it.
don't either.
We've been shooting our own wounded. And so it's an education. It's an education, because we've got a lot of boomer leaders whose default only knows that our third place used to always be church. It was home, work, school, and church. And now it's a whole different world. But boomer leaders they need to learn a new default. If you said to most of your leaders in the church, we need to develop a virtual congregation, 3/4, if not more of them, would say, but that's not a real congregation. We need people here live and in person. Well, yeah, it's great to have people there live and in person, but you're one church in Indiana that could be having a congregation that's all across the country, for that matter, all across the world. You could be doing virtual things that align someone with your church who brings 3 of their sisters to a Bible study you just happen to host virtually. There's ways to engage. So two things for you. One is educating your leaders about what the new is, because I have found baby boomers open to it. They just need, it needs to really come from another boomer. If some youngster, some of our millennial consultants or Gen Z consultants got up and said, you boomers need to do dun 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 dun, they would be like, no, thank you. But if somebody a little older says, here's the way we're going to need to go from this, they'd listen to that. And then about children or youth, when they're one at a time. Absolutely. Every single one has to be focused on one at a time. I would put together more grandparent, grandchild events, or grandparent, child outreach things. And your idea of the neighborhood stuff is actually currently what's happening in my house right now. I have some kids that come over after school, and I just happen to be teaching, and they know I'll be done by 4, but they're just kids in the neighborhood that they know where the snacks are, they know where the drinks are, their parents have all given permission. And they're out there now knowing that I'm teaching this class, and so they're all trying to be quiet, but you just hear a bunch of whispering out there. And they just live in my neighborhood, and all the moms and dads know. Anyway, thanks for asking that.
Well, thank you for those insights. One thing that I'm doing, and it's reaching 20-year-olds, I guess. Because I live in an apartment complex downtown Columbus, and it's next to schools and everything, and the vast majority are in their 20s. I don't know what generation that is anymore.
That's Gen
and-
Z.
Gen Z, and
Generation Z.
and I'm a firm believer that what we were talking about is, there's a time and place to gather in the church, but also the church leaves the building to do work and ministry. And it's really a selfish thing I'm doing because I enjoy doing it. I started sort of like theology uncorked at
Love it.
the
It
apartment.
works. Yep.
And it's all, and it's, I'm
And
very
it's
clear.
working,
Yeah, all conversation, no conversion,
right?
and it's anyone who shows up and everyone,
Yeah.
and we just talk on relevant things, and I don't act, I take this off, and I don't act as the official spokesperson or the person who knows the answers, because let me tell you, the older I get, the less answers I have for things.
Isn't that funny?
And it's more entering into the mystery and relying on community. And
You
so
know,
there's a big part of, I think, helping people to realize that the work of the church is outside.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. Like for an example, if families are on the soccer field, then why can't gathering be on the soccer field? I would be curious what would happen if a little 30-minute worship service was offered before the soccer games began. I think you'd have people actually, if they could be in the outside environment and just be there with some lawn chairs or whatever, and it felt safe and open. I think you'd have people participate. And you know what I was going to say? Your meeting, your like theology on tap thing is so happening right now. So much so that now that you've got their trust, you could wear your collar and they would be warmed by that. Maybe not at first. Gen Z still appreciate the awe and majesty of symbols. It's the people inside the church they don't trust. That's why they love going to Christmas Eve service still, or like to weddings in traditional settings, because they love the symbolic awe and majesty. They just don't want to feel tricked or any kind of bait and switch.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where
Friends,
yes, we are done.
this is it. This is our time. So
Thank you.
good. I'll send out a recap email per usual with the recording, with Stephanie's PowerPoint, with a link to the agenda with some more notes in it. And Stephanie's email address is also in the agenda. So if you think of any more questions and you want to ask, send them our way.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you all. Grateful for you.
Blessings on your head. Go in peace.
Bye. Bye.
Go in peace. Bye-bye.